Bill Swift from Brierley, now Capillary. And we have Jonathan Silver from Engaged People. So actually, if you could introduce yourselves, give a little more of your background so people
Yeah, sure.
know. And we have 463 years of loyalty experience combined.
On the stage, yeah.
Yeah,
Which is impressive because we're all 28.
that's right.
Yeah, so far I've heard this is kind of a senior group, and technology is the problem. I'm Bill Swift. It's great to be here. I didn't realize it was going to be such an intimate event, David. It's pretty cool. But I was the Chief Technology Officer at Brierley for 20 years, and then evolved from there. We had a parent company in Japan, and our CEO was called back to Japan, so I was a CEO briefly. And number one job was to try to find a new home for the company, which occurred just about 2 months ago. So now we're part of Capillary Technologies, based in Bangalore, India, in the leadership category in the Forrester Wave, this most recent round. So I can say we now because it's been 2 months. But I'm responsible now for the integration of the companies that they are acquiring, and also responsible for the technology engineering function in North America for all of the tech that has to sit on top of the core platform.
So you've got your own technology challenges yourself.
Yeah. And you know, what's interesting is that Brierley, for the longest time, and the company's been around literally since the 80s, and we've always had enterprise clients. And over the years, our technology offering really got very narrow and pretty deep on that core engine. So this topic is really relevant because the types of clients that we had and the solutions and the integration that was required kind of shaped our company, but now quickly becoming part of really a software company, a SaaS-based software company. Their offering is broader. It gets more into CRM, campaign execution, delivery, CDP, and there's more there. And so I see clients that take all of it versus where we've been historically, a lot of integration. So it's really a relevant topic, and it's really cool to be here. Thank you, Chris.
Jonathan, tell us about you and Engaged People.
Sure, so Jonathan Silver with Engage. We're a loyalty tech company, so we spend our life in tech and tech stacks. Basically, we've got two products that we bring to market. Sorry, one is our loyalty management software platform. And as you're going through this, I'll talk later on about what we've done to make it consumable in modules by all of our customers, which from a tech point of view is scary, because in the old days we used to be fully integrated into every system and no one could disrupt you. And now you're just an API that anyone can replace. So pros and cons to that. And then the other side is we've focused on enabling people to use their currency at retail as a form of payment. And so what we've seen in the future of member engagement is I want to be checking out, we're launching in the airports in the fall where I tap my credit card and it says, hey, Jonathan, do you want to use your points for that? And so it's all about member engagement and that kind of a tech stack. And so we deal with all the things you were talking about with our clients and how do we make ourselves relevant and add value to them and further enhance their ability, because we don't do everything, we only do the stuff we do.
Great, thank you. So let's start by just asking the big question. What do you perceive, Bill, why don't you start, as the biggest issue you see today with brands and how they're leveraging loyalty technology?
The number one thing that we hear most often these days is that brands don't know if their program is actually working. It's kind of sad, actually, but it's they haven't necessarily done the proper strategic design, financial modeling. They don't know if it's truly changing behavior. And you have that age-old argument with the CFO on cost center versus profit center. And I think from a CX perspective, they don't know if their customers are necessarily happy with the experience. And so those two things are kind of coupled together. I do think that the SaaS offerings now, there's a lot of competition. The world has changed dramatically over the past even 5 years. But Forrester even has pushed us, all of it, on the vendor side of it, to make the tools easy to use, super intuitive. So it's easy, relatively easy to put a program in market without having thought through the impact, or how it's going to be measured, how you're going to evolve it. And so that's the number one thing that we hear. And we've always, it's a good checkpoint to back up, focus on strategy, and I've always been the tech guy, but focus on strategy first, and focus on what the desired customer experience needs to look like, and then look for the technologies that are going to support that.
Right.
But that's the number one thing that we hear.
And Jonathan?
So very similar. We also see more and more of our customers are bringing stuff in-house because they need to control both the operational experience and the member experience. And no single tech stack does everything well. And we're seeing that we're plugging into more and more complementary features that we would never get into. And so it's always been about, for our clients, it's been taking control of that experience from their vendors and the pushback they get, because vendors don't want to give up control. That's how we make our money. And so it's very much around that angst and that ability, as well as to change rapidly. We're looking at the changes we get and the changes that come. They don't, look, 3 years ago we were sitting around going, nothing's going to change, and the world just changed in a heartbeat.
Right.
And it's that ability to adapt to that. And if you've got legacy tech stacks, they become very difficult and become disablers instead of enablers. And so it's helping our clients get through to that.
So the agility is critical. Great, thank you. So Jonathan, the ideas that I presented sound practical, but in reality, the implementation is very challenging. How do you bolt this together effectively?
So this is the challenge, is that nobody does everything perfectly.
No.
I tell my wife I'm perfect. She doesn't believe me. And there's also, people have niches that they're experts in.
Right.
And so I'll give an example. We have a client in Australia who I think has done this better than anyone else. And they're an insurance company, and they're giving people points for staying healthy. And so they used, when they did their strategy sessions, they went, okay, here's what we need. And they kept all of the architecture in-house and the user experience in-house. And so, so they just took our APIs to consume our segmentation and our awards and whatever we did. They took another vendor who does the health tracking and took their APIs, and they only picked vendors who are API-based that they could have complete control. And it's the first client we've had who took only our APIs and not a single one of our member engagement pieces and built it together under their umbrella. So they owned the member experience, they owned the operational call center, internal operational experience, and are just bolting in vendors as it makes sense. Now that is easy to do when you start from scratch,
right,
and you've got a big tech budget and a really good architect up front. For the rest of our clients, we're working with them on, all right, what do you need? Where can we get it? Are we in the way? Are we helping you out? Or do we need to incorporate it for you? And we're doing a lot more of custom work for clients to bring other partners that we don't do into a tech stack, because in that case, we've got the operational UI and the member UI. And so you're seeing more of that, where how do I go and take the best of breed and bring it into a single environment so that a member has a single experience. The worst thing is when a member has to go here for this, go here for something else, click through. People can tell when they're clicking from one side to another. There's a delay, and logos change and nothing looks the same. And so very much a focus on that. The challenge we always run into is legacy. So if we think about our banking clients, they've got 30, 40-year-old systems that are hard to meet. And if you think about hospitality, you're in the business of booking things. And so this is ancillary. And so it's very much being able to tap into that. And it's about operational effectiveness as well.
And it's interesting because for the first time this year, when I did the Forrester Wave on Loyalty Technology Solutions, we gave full credit in most cases for either having native capabilities or having a fully integrated partner capability, because you don't need to build it all, right? And it makes a lot more sense. So, Bill, speaking of the best of breed, we have data that says that brands want to minimize the number of vendors they deal with, yet they want best of breed or best for them, right? So how do we help them get what they want? Because they also want their profits to grow, and technology costs money.
Yeah, we hear that term vendor consolidation quite a bit. And it could be good or it could be bad, depending on what side of it you're on. But at the highest level, I think brands really just have two choices. You can pick the best of breed or the best for them and across those different categories. And when you do that, the architecture team, the enterprise architect, coupled with the marketing people organizationally, tied together with shared goals, becomes super important. And or you can choose, and I kind of alluded to this with some smaller clients that we might have throughout Southeast Asia, where they're not going to spend a lot in total. Their budgets are just different than here, and and they really want everything in one spot. And so they don't have to spend a lot of time integrating because it's all together. But then you put all your eggs in that one basket, and if it doesn't work out, you got to change the whole thing. And your point on the APIs is right on, because as much as we promote our clients to have that middleware, it's like a vendor agnostic middleware on their side, so they can more easily swap us out. And we help them do it. But I think those are the two high level choices. And your question, what can we do to help? I think looking at it from the customer service or customer experience perspective is really important, because if you start there instead of with the tool, and most often we've had clients say anything that touches the customer, we're taking it in-house. Yeah. And loyalty, thankfully is kind of on the back end of that, the engine part of it. But the websites and the mobile apps and that customer experience that they see and touch will get owned by the client. So the customer experience starts with tech stack that's not even on the screen. It's
right.
Not the loyalty tech stack, it's not the marketing tech stack. It's I'm checking into the lounge at the airport, or I'm at the counter trying to rent a car. That's where it starts. And so if you come at it from that angle, then I think it provides a little clarity on what the tech stack should look like, because there's specific use cases that you're trying to enable at those different touch points. And you could start at the fuel pump, you could start in the store, it's just starting from that perspective, I think gives a different angle on it. And then if you look at it like that, then the vendors that you consider are going to be different than
right.
if you're just looking at it kind of generically.
Interesting. Jonathan, so we know, integration is one of the hardest parts of a loyalty platform implementation. And they now need to be integrated not only to the rest of Martech, but to your e-commerce platform, to your ad tech, your customer data warehouse, your CDPs, all your channels and touch points, as Bill was just saying. What's your advice to brands on prioritizing those integrations?
So whenever we talk to customers, it's kind of what Bill said, is you start with a member. And you turn around and say, here's what I expect my member experience to look like. And the vendors you pick either can deliver on that or they have to go. And it becomes very, we have one client who's really good at this, where they will look at stuff and go, I know that's brilliant, I know that people want it, it's not going to be the right member experience. Come back when it can meet my member experience. And that's a hard thing to look at, where they look and say, hey, that's going to reduce my cost per point by X, it's going to save me, whatever, millions of dollars, but it's a suboptimal member experience. And there's an incredible amount of discipline and alignment on strategy that starts at the top to get that to come in. And when the customers do that well, look, they'll look at us and go, I know you do this, they're better at it, integrate with them. Right? And that hurts when you take that away and go, okay. But they've got a vision of what everything needs to look like, and you can see it, the impact it's had on their member engagement, their member experience, their Net Promoter Score, the reduction in OpEx, internal OpEx specifically, impact on their ads, and just acquisition and retention. So it very much starts with a strategy, knowing who you want to be to your member, how do you want them to feel when you engage, and if, no matter how cool the tech is, if it doesn't do that, and also doesn't allow you to grow. You know, we mentioned AI at the beginning of this. That's coming. We don't know what it's going to do. We know it's going to change everything. And so I got to make sure that I can adapt to it in real time, and I also don't want to be first. Let's be clear. You don't want to be the first person out there. You kind of want to be the second or third. But you need to be ready for it and have it in a way that's effective. So it very much starts with member experience, OpEx, and when I mean OpEx, more operational experience and operational utilization and capability, and then make your vendors fit into that.
Do you have any additional thoughts, Bill?
I was just thinking, we use the term day one, day two a lot, especially on a new program, and the scope is always in question. It's what's most important? You get that out, and consumers, I think, expect the program to evolve over time, so it's okay that it's not all there day one. Every successful program changes and evolves, and the customer experience changes with it. So we use those terms a lot, just to try to prioritize and make sure that we're doing the right things first. And specific to the tech stack itself, the API, everyone, you know, thankfully it is an API first world. Everyone kind of goes there first, but it's still not possible for everything to be real time and immediate. And so we also prioritize along those lines, because some legacy systems maybe can't be integrated with in real time. So then you got event queues and streaming and people listening for certain events and different partners, and they're sending an email maybe when they see a tier change. So there's different techniques, and we also prioritize along those lines as well. And some are still obviously batch. And, you know, if it really is batch, then at least can we do these batch cycles more frequently to try to make it more interactive with the consumer. But there's a marketing day one, day two, and kind of a tech answer there.
Thank you. So are there any questions from the audience? Not then. Well, then let's just end on ChatGPT. How do you think that will be realized and used effectively within loyalty?
We have no idea. I think everybody's playing with it. Everyone's using it. Everyone's experimenting. Look, we have an R&D team that spends 30-40% of their time on their own and other people's, and we've seen some amazing stuff. We've seen offer engines being written in real time right now, based upon what gets looked at, what's being used, how it's being adopted, and it's just churning out content quicker than any human can actually do it. I don't know if it's going to work yet. We're still trying to figure this out. Don't know when it gets scary, but we have to be involved in it, and we have to play with it and see what it does, because it's coming. And it's kind of, look, like I said, I'm old. When we first started doing this stuff, we would print catalogs.
Oh yeah, catalogs.
Right? Made a fortune printing catalogs. And then the internet came, and no one would have said to us, well, hey, there's going to be this company where you're going to order something at 9 a.m. and it's going to show up at 4 p.m. And you're going to get pissed if you have to wait till the next day. And so it's going to be transformative like that. Right. And so, you know, you play until you figure out where it makes sense, and then you can take it to your clients.
Bill?
My wife would kill me, but my first use of ChatGPT was to write a letter to my wife. And she seriously thought that it was for me. I mean, it was pretty, but with Capillary, and I can, you know, it was relatively new, but in a sprint demo just last week, I saw our integration with ChatGPT, and it was cool. It was the content side of the application, setting up a campaign. There's like double points this weekend for certain people if you do a certain activity. And as a marketer in the tool, you could kind of sketch out what you wanted to say and integrate it behind the UI. It came back with 3 or 4 other options. And it said, you know, which one do you like the best? And so you could click on that one, and it would give you 3 or 4 more other options based on that. And they were good. it was just, I think, helping the marketer maybe think quicker and faster. It's kind of like the translation, you know, you don't want to say something incorrect in a different country or different language as well. So I thought that was a really good first use of it. It was just helping refine the outbound communication content, in that case for an SMS.
And that's the line I was thinking of as well, to have the marketer just be able to type in, they want a campaign that achieves, you know, X percent revenue, you know, has Y percent uptake and all, and puts in what their parameters are, and ChatGPT creates it in the platform.
So, yeah, it's actually beyond that. So I'll tell you the test case we did was for a credit card company doing acquisition on Google AdWords and on a page. And it actually kept rewriting the words on the page based upon utilization, how long people were looking at it,
Wow.
click-through rates. And so it was fairly freaky, but within an hour, we had gone from about a 3% click-through to a 4.5%. And it was just getting better and better. And that was actually on Bard, which is the Google equivalent, which is more advanced than ChatGPT. So that's what I'm saying. It's a lot more than just having someone look at it. It was writing content, changing words, and then, you know, so the next application was, if I know your IP address, I'll change your words for you.
Interesting.
From a different perspective, to be honest, the first service we developed around ChatGPT that we actually sold was ABC, which is the AI bullshit check, because
Love it.
there is still a lot of hallucination and bias stuff coming out, and you need to have some validation and some accountability at some point. So again, I love your idea with playing with the stuff and finding out, but you need time and budget for companies need to do that, because
we're not there yet.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness!
Oh,
because
right.
again,
Yeah.
well, let's make that clear.
Yeah.
Well, and I will end by telling you that a colleague of mine, Stephanie Liu, who covers consumer privacy and zero-party data, she wrote a blog, and it was the top read blog in the month of May for Forrester, and it was entitled, and I can hear her saying this, seriously, stop putting consumer data into ChatGPT. So, thank you very much. I hope this was helpful. Thank you.
We still have a little bit of time. I don't know if there's any more questions at all, but a quick one. Just Mary, you opened the session with talking about you receive, as a consumer, you get communications from brands, and we know, if we all put our brand hats on, that there's no single, especially the bigger the brand, the less chance that there is a single source of communication. Marketing wants to own their channel, loyalty wants to own their channel, brands, if you're a multi-brand organization, want to own their channel. There's internal arguments about who owns the customer, who can talk to who. Let's just let's just think about a typical airline, a typical hotel, a typical large retailer, right? And let's keep the segmentation simple. You have two groups of people, whom you have emails and permission to communicate with. You have members and you have non-members, right? So who knows what I'm talking about here is you get an email from an airline or a hotel or Bed Bath & Beyond, and you're going to hear a lot about Bed Bath & Beyond in the next couple of days. And it's from the loyalty program, and you open it like, oh cool, there's some kind of loyalty offer here, maybe it's a point, or maybe it's a special deal for me as a member, or whatever else. And it might say, Dear David, you might have some personalization when you open it up. There may even be your current points or status at the top, maybe, not always. And then you read it, and you read through it, and you're skimming through it on the train or the plane or whatever amongst the other 150 emails in your inbox, and you're left wondering, where's the loyalty angle in this email? What on earth has this email got to do with hands up if you don't know what I'm talking about. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? And then you conclude, because we're all professionals, we're in the industry, you're like, oh, this must be a generic marketing email or something else, nothing to do with loyalty, but because I'm a member, it's coming from the program rather than from the brand. How is that a positive customer experience? mean, it's sort of a rhetorical question, but my real question for the panel there is, how do we overcome some of those issues? We're never going to solve the internal politics of who owns the customer, who's speaking to the customer, but how, as we think through Martech solutions, for example, can we look to try to bridge that gap so that we're increasing relevancy when we're talking to members, period, even if it's not a member or program specific offer? Do you have thoughts on that kind of challenge?
Yeah, I could start. The organizational part of it's probably tougher, but with a lot of these tools, and the UIs have progressed amazingly. You know, they look at journey builders, and we're going to wait 3 days, and if I haven't heard from them, I'm going to send them this and that. But they all assume that they all have all the data. So I think from a communication perspective, you really do have to you have to at least designate one of them as the single source of communications. And even if different organizations come into the tool from different perspectives, they can see that we sent this person an email yesterday, and we know that they're a member, and just even if they're different organizations using the same tool, standardize at the tool level. And really, even if you have replicated data around, pick one source as the communication source.
Yeah, that single source, the golden thread, right?
Yeah, I mean, your challenge is even if you've got a single source, you're never going to get it right. Right? Your data is imperfect. People aren't perfect. And so what was interesting to me yesterday may not be interesting to me today. Everybody look at their Google search history, right? I looked for something yesterday, I'm not interested in that today, and that's all I get, right? And so I think there's also, we have to manage our own expectations that you are going to send out emails, and we're not going to get 100% click-through because we're not going to get it right. And everyone's different, and people change all the time. And so it's just about getting better and better and looking at what worked and learning, but you can't get it perfect.
I agree, you can't get it perfect, but I put in a plug for customer preference centers, which both the brand and the customer have access to. So I, as the customer, can go in and say, I only want text, I don't want any email, or I only want to hear from you once a month, or whatever. But also, that's where you store your zero-party data or your first-party data. And so, like Sephora allows you to do this. They may send an email to me to say, oh, this eyeshadow will really complement your green eyes, but my eyes aren't green, right? So, but I can go in and change that and fix it, right? So maybe I'm wearing contacts now and now they're blue, right? Or maybe it was just wrong in the first place. So giving the customer access to their data and allowing them to modify it, as well as continually updating that data from the brand.
Any, Carolina?
Sharing my experience from an airline perspective at Air Canada, I think it's ideal to think that one day we're going to be able to talk to the customer in an integrated way. It's going to be really personalized. We all strive to do that, but I think in reality, like, it's going to be in a middle ground. It's kind of a little bit of a push and pull because there are different business units with different objectives. In the case of an airline coalition, we have a lot of data, and then, well, we want to work on a contact management strategy, let's say. So what does this customer want to hear from which channel, about even the brand feeling, right? Is it more an Air Canada brand feeling, an Aeroplan, in this case for us, brand feeling? But I think thinking that we want to strive to an equilibrium where it's not going to be 100% customer experience friendly in a way, because we have different business units that all want to talk to the customer and they all have their own objectives. But at the end, we want the best, as we want to really achieve an integrated experience. But I don't think it's ever going to be like that, and I think it's a very difficult nut to crack, and one that we're all thinking about. The road to personalization is a long road, but I think it's good to just, small increments and keep in mind, like, what's the ideal end goal, and that end goal is not going to be, your ideal end goal may not be ideal per se, but something that takes into account the realities of your business and what members are expecting from you.
Makes sense.
Any comments to that, or just say thank you, Caroline? Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Sorry, I don't have a question. I don't have any response to that. So if anybody does, go ahead. I have a separate question. So I've worked in multiple industries, automotive companies, travel companies, worked in some healthcare. All the things you've talked about so far today, like the disintegration of databases, the residence of data in different silos, the fragmentation of departments within marketing. There's loyalty sit in marketing, there's loyalty sit separately, in some companies it's separate, in some part of marketing. And very frustrated across all those industries, across decades now, of hearing the same thing over and over, right? So who has made significant progress in minimizing that confusion, I'll call it? Who's done a good job at bringing together that single view of the customer and being able to use that, I'll call it the publish and subscribe model of customer data, publish data in and everybody subscribes back out to the single view and then uses it? Who's doing that well? And if anybody is, what have they done from an organizational perspective to align the different fragmented departments and groups? Does that come from the CEO? Does it come from the CMO? Does it come from the CXO, who's now become more and more prevalent? So in your experiences, whether it's your clients, whether it's somebody outside your client base that you've observed, who's making progress on consolidation of this fragmentation and being able to bring the organizations together to have that single view of the customer and then ultimately a single customer experience?
Sure. So there was a Canadian retailer called Shoppers Drug Mart before, which was the largest drugstore in Canada, and before it got purchased by Loblaws, which is the largest grocery chain, was unbelievably good at its data. And the whole loyalty program was just driven off, they got SKU level data for everything you've ever bought from them, to the point where they knew exactly what offer to put out in order to make their quarterly numbers. And so we used to run their program, and they'd call us up and they would go, we need to run triple points for 2 days. And we go, oh, you're 8% behind on your quarterly number. And they had it down to that fine art, and down to the point where, it's going back a couple of years, they would go, if you took a pregnancy test and bought coconut butter, I knew you got pregnant. Okay? And would track offers on what to do about that stuff. And they had it down, and then, since they got purchased and now bought a bigger chain, and they've lost that singular focus on that program. And I'll see it as a consumer, before everything that showed up on my inbox was relevant. And then yesterday I got a makeup offer. I've stopped wearing makeup in public, so I'm not. And so it's a very difficult thing. But what made them successful was the head of it, when this is what we're going to do. We are a data company, and we are going to use data first. And it's all about the consumer, and it's all about putting offers that were relevant in front of it. Like when we first started working with it back in the 90s, we were sending out 2 million coupons a week, and about 50,000 versions would go out. And so, but once they got purchased, they lost that singular focus on member experience, member value, and stuff. So, and since then,
It's tough.
it's not. Carolina was talking about it, but Air Canada's done a very good job with their super elite people, and their top tier customers, on relevant stuff showing up in your inbox.
Did you have a thought, Bill?
Our best case studies absolutely started with the CEO and shaping the company to be a customer-first organization, and then pulling the CMO, CTO together with shared goals, and really it was a couple that we just launched. It was the #1 initiative for the company, and everyone then seems to rally behind that. And in a couple of our client cases recently, we use the term one team a lot, and maybe it's overused, but I think it's really important because you do have the corporate organization coming together. There's also lots of partners and vendors across IT and marketing that all need to come together. So it's really important for the chemistry of that entire team to be working towards the same end goal. And with the architects in place and that alignment organizationally, the tech stack seems to kind of fall in place, and we know exactly who's responsible for sending communications. And even if you want to send a triggered communication, you got to send it through them, you know, so you have visibility in one spot of who got what. But I think there's a big organizational part of that. It starts at the top.
And it starts, to me, with a strategy before you even have a program. And I get a lot of calls from clients who say, okay, we want a loyalty program, you know, and I think I can do it with a spreadsheet, but is there a vendor out there? I mean, I've had those calls. And I say, I back them up and I say, you need a strategy, and it needs to be an enterprise-wide strategy. And maybe it's not, and I'm thinking about this now, is it a loyalty strategy or is it just a customer experience strategy that includes loyalty? It includes your customer communications, all of that. But there has to be an owner of that, and it has to have executive support, because everybody in the organization, whether you're customer facing or not, needs to understand that what they do has some impact on the customer. They may not see it directly, but it has an impact. And think about Apple. You know, aside from their credit card program, they don't have a structured loyalty program. But whenever there's a new iPhone out, there are lines outside the door. People, you know, sleep in tents the night before. They have very loyal customers because they have built their products in a way that they migrate easily from one to the next. They connect easily to each other. There's a whole strategy behind how they treat customers, how they talk to them. You know, they name their people geniuses in the stores. I mean, what more trust could you have? So.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jonathan. What a star-studded panel to kick us off, huh?
Thank you so much.